Hi, Devangana. Good evening. I think all the others have joined us on the YouTube. No problem. Uh, I hope I'm audible to you. Good evening, Devangana. I'm just waiting. So your course formally starts from seventh evening, or you can call this as eight. I hope I'm audible to you. Hi, Mehak. Good evening, all the YouTube viewers. I hope I'm streaming fine. You can all hear me loud and clear, I hope. So I'm very happy to be here starting the discussions on Indian society. Indian society एक बहुत बड़ा part है paper 1 का, and these topics of society are also linked to paper 2. Paper 2 has a topic of social justice. You cannot talk about social justice, empowerment, rights, even topics of governance without knowing Indian society, our cultural ethos, the diversity, the challenges. Hi Venkatesh, hi Shirampur, Shivya Sambyal, all of you, good evening, good evening. So while I'm happy introducing Puru Dubey, some of you have already interacted with him in one of the sessions where we started off with the program. I also want to announce a few things today. It should be to the benefit of all of you. The fact is, last couple of weeks, we have been planning to somehow bring some value to the preparation of GS. And in the process, I'm happy to announce that we are partnering with some of the greatest names in UPSC preparation ecosystem. We have Shubha Ranjan Madam. She has an immense respect, immense presence in political science, IR, PSIR, in polity. She's a very well established institution and a teacher. We have Balyan sir with us now for history, art, and culture. Vikas Ranjan sir is again an incredible name, a very, very experienced faculty for society and social justice. And he is a teacher who has established himself with a lot of credibility in sociology. And we also are partnering with Ritesh Jaiswal for science and technology. Ritesh sir has been at the cutting edge of technology, the way you call it. And of course, I'll be there with you for geography and environment. I think for all of you, this should be the dream team, which is coming together to support students. And all of us have one big mission with us. Whatever is happening in the ecosystem of coaching, whatever is happening in the ecosystem in the name of coaching, a lot of confusion, a lot of loss of trust, credibility. We hope to bring some semblance of trust back in the ecosystem. Most of us have been teaching for almost 20 odd years. We bring with us some insights, we bring with us some nuances that subjects demand. जो questions आजकल पूछे जा रहे हैं, questions are no longer superficial questions. They require understanding of issues. They require some appreciation at the conceptual core level. Subjects like PSIR, geography, sociology, history, environment, these are those pure humanities subjects, which are the pillars around which humanities is built. So we're very happy coming together. We'll be offering GS Foundation course also, maybe in a month or two. But our beginning is from the GS Main Support Program. And all the viewers, aspirants who have given interview, who have qualified and are looking forward to improving their ranks, and even otherwise, अगर आपको कोई मेंटरशिप चाहिए, कोई डाउट्स आपको क्लैरिफाई करना है, कोई भी अपना आंसर स्क्रिप्ट्स आपको दिखाना है फॉर सम इवैल्यूएशन, प्लीज वॉक इन इनटू आवर इंस्टीट्यूट्स. You can walk in into Shubha Ranjan's office itself. You can walk in into my institute, Balyan Sir's Insights, Vikas Sir, his Triumph Institution. आपको जहां आपको मन कर रहा है, walk in. Do let us know if we can give our feedback to improve your marks. So this is a very proud moment for me. I'm announcing at this instance. And one important development is we have a proper brochure. मैं आपको सारा ब्रोश्योर अभी तो नहीं दिखा पाऊंगा. It'll take you some more time. But we have a proper brochure. I will share with you the brochure on our Telegram group. Shabir Edukemy for IAS. If you're all there, I'll share the details. In fact, we have two programs now. One is you can only join the tests and the supporting systems, which include some bit of videos for practice, or you can join the entire mentorship. And one thing I've been repeatedly telling all of you is, it does not matter अगर आप prelims clear नहीं कर रहे हो. It doesn't matter अगर आपका prelims खराब हुआ है. Take this as an opportunity to hone your main skills. I'll say all of you join this main support program and stick with us and the team for 2.5 months. We will complete the entire GS program. उसके बाद आपको September, October, November, December, you'll have another 4-5 months, do a second and third round of mains practice also. So don't block yourself just because results नहीं हुआ तो हम बेकार हैं 2-3 महीना. ये cycles होते हैं. अगर आपके आज के डेट में अगर टॉपर्स भी देखोगे, most of them qualify 4th attempt में, 5th attempt में, 6th attempt में. It takes time. And one reason why it takes time is because this direction is missing. People are figuring out, people are still struggling to understand the process. So I think we will be able to short circuit that. And one important, we can say one important design in our MSP program is that we are making you write live answers. आप मेरे साथ, I am personally there along with the toppers. Puru Dubey is one of the toppers who will be with us. He will be a very important pillar along with some other toppers also. We will insist you write answers with us. The biggest challenge of mains preparation is postponing answer writing, postponing the practice part of answer writing. Most of you join a test series और फिर आप आंसर लिखते ही नहीं हो. हम लोग ने बहुत smartly manage कर रखा है. Your first session will be on 7th of June on Sunday evening 7 o'clock. You will be live with me where I will discuss the questions of geography. So what we are doing is every GS session ke pehle, the previous day, we give you 10-15 questions which you write, practice, memorize, and then you practice writing in live sessions in the morning. 7 बजे मेरे साथ आप बैठोगे 1.5 घंटा to write 10 to 15 answers. And then we have planned your entire duration for the day. So ये announcement था. Okay, please join us. कुछ हद तक, I am being very insisting. I've been very persistent in trying to get you enrolled because I know this is a type of effort which I doubt if anybody else can replicate. The experience, the commitment, the integrity से साथ हम कर रहे हैं. So please don't think twice. Join us, and you'll have a fair idea about what we are going to do in today's session with Puru. Puru has a very nice insight into social issues, society. He had sociology as optional. We are proud to have partnered with him in some ways, and we had a very small exposure. He was in part of my essays classes also. So Puru, you are there now. So today we have 4 or 5 questions on Indian society. Puru will discuss how he decodes the question, how he takes the question apart, how he enriches the question. Like I said, this session is like, getting into the mind of toppers. Topper kaisa sochta hai? Because the questions that surprise you are also the questions that surprise toppers examination mein. The questions that trouble you are also the questions that trouble the toppers. But toppers have a way of decoding it. They have a way of attacking a question. So he'll be there with you for next 1 hour, talking to you, discussing the questions, and feel free to reach out. और ये जो questions हैं, हम लोग कल सुबह 7 बजे live लिखेंगे दोबारा. So I'll share the link for all of you who are participating. You can join the session. Dubey, I went on. I just thought I'll introduce you. Very proud to have you. Thank you for joining us. The field is all yours now. You can share the questions and you can decide which question to discuss.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir, for making me part of this wonderful team. And I'm delighted to see all the legends in this program. And we are here today to discuss some questions of Indian society. And since I have had sociology as my option, so as someone who has studied the subject deeply enough, I can say, if I can dare say, that I can bring some nuances to the table. But as a former aspirant myself, I'll try to bring in the perspectives of aspirant and also the examiner who is going to finally evaluate the copies of the students. And before I begin, let me share my screen. Uh, I need to write a few things because before I begin discussing these few questions, I need to take a slight detour on what I consider as the essential pillars of the answer writing. And then, of course, we will go on to discuss these 4 or 5 questions, uh, whatever time permits.
I'm just interjecting here for few seconds. Guys, don't just listen to Puru. Take a pen, paper, sit down, make notes. This is almost like a proper class demonstrating. तो बस सुन के खुश मत हो जाना कि हाँ सुन लिया, हमें पता है. Okay, listen to him, make your notes. Okay, you will not be interacting with people like him very often. Okay, so happy learning. Puru, I'm dropping off now. I'm leaving the platform to you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, in answer writing, is it visible on the screen? Okay, I can see that it is visible. Whenever we write answers, we have to understand that any answer has to have 4 or 5 essential pillars. The first one is demand. The second one is introduction and conclusion. The third is dimension. And the fourth one is, pardon me, is substantialization. And the fifth one is embellishments, sajawat, to make the copy more presentable towards examiner. Now, demand, addressing the demand of the question is the first and the foremost responsibility of anyone who thinks he is going to clear the examination. Because the examiner has demanded from us through his question our understanding of the topic. And if we do not address the demand of the question, the hands of the examiner are tied. Probably he has been instructed to mark us on the basis of whether we address the demand of the question. So understanding what the question really is asking is essential in order to gain any mark. You may write as beautiful as you want, but if you miss the demand, be sure enough that you will not be getting any marks. Coming to introduction. Introduction is also called the face of the answer. Think about it. When the examiner first comes to read your answer, he will begin with the introduction. And that is a perfect opportunity for you to establish a connection with him, to establish to him that you have understood the demand of the question, you understand the context in which the question is being asked, and you are ready to hit the bullseye. Conclusion, of course, provides the closure. Conclusion is also important because it is that final moment when the examiner is going to reward you with the marks that you deserve. So conclusion also is an essential pillar of the answer. Then we come to dimensions. Dimensions are important, particularly because of 2 reasons. One, because it highlights your ability to understand the topic and to understand in different dimensions, through different approaches, how well you are able to see the topic, to understand the question through different perspectives. When you write multiple points, because remember, this is a competition, there are 13,000 students who are running or who are racing in that mains exam against you. And you have to prove to the examiner that you are more capable than the others. So generating more dimensions and relevant dimensions, mind you, writing points for the sake of it will irritate the examiner and you'll be easily caught. So you have to generate multiple dimensions. There will be times when you'll not be aware of the question itself and you have to think on your feet. So answer writing thus becomes an art in itself. Substantialization is the fourth pillar. Whatever argument you provide to the examiner has to be substantialized. Substantialize means to provide evidence for the argument that you are presenting. This you can do through facts, through data, through examples, case studies, and anything else, maybe thinkers' perspectives, even though you may not have sociology as an option. But I have seen that many students, even though they do not have sociology as option, in Indian society questions, they are providing thinkers. So that's the level of competition these days. And then comes the final part, which is embellishment. In order to make the answer that you write in the examination more presentable, you have to make it neat. You have to embellish it with diagrams, maps, flowcharts, and other relevant diagrams like triangles, funnels, graphs, whatever is relevant to the question, so that the examiner is more interested in your answer and is able to give that much of attention. I'll take an example. Think about it. We have 3 months or 2.5 months of time period between the mains exam and the results being announced. And your copy is to be evaluated by a select few people who are called by UPSC. They have to evaluate hundreds of copies. So if you put yourself into their shoes, you'll realize that in order to attract the attention of the examiner, you have to be neat, you have to be presentable, you have to hit the demand, you have to hit the bullseye, you have to substantialize your argument, and you have to attract the examiner. This is itself, this in itself is a task. And that is why I think that answer writing is an art in itself, which you gain through practice, you gain through relevant guidance, and you gain through repetitive iterations. So this was a brief intro into how to write answers, or what I consider the essential pillars of answer writing. And let me discuss a few questions about on Indian society, which I was shared by sir. The first question was, I hope you have the questions, but I'll write it anyway. Indian society is confronting a series of dilemmas and paradoxes. Discuss. This is the question before you. Now, as a beginner, it may sound as a very vague question. But mind you, that when you have read the Indian society in sufficient depth, you'll be able to understand that it is asking about something uh, about the social change that the Indian society is witnessing, and the coexistence of modernity and tradition, social change, continuity, and persistence of the traditional structures in Indian society. You have to be able to understand the question first. Otherwise, you cannot answer this question. So let's say you have to write the introduction to this question. Now, when I write the introduction to an answer question, I use various methods. I can begin with a quote. I can use a relevant data. I can use a current context, or I can hit the essence of the question. In this question, from what I understand, data does not solve my problem. Current context can be used. But since this is a very conceptual question about Indian society, I think you should start either with a quote or with hitting the essence of the question. For me, the one way of answering this question can be that while economic growth, urbanization, democratization, and globalization are rapidly transforming Indian society, these processes have also given contradictory outcomes, generating a series of dilemmas and paradoxes. This is a sufficient introduction which gives an idea to the examiner that you have understood where the question is coming from. When he reads this line, he will be able to understand that you have a vague, fair idea of where the question is coming from. Of course, when you have prepared enough, then you can also begin with a quote. And this is why I say that for every micro topic that you have to have sufficient data, quotes, current context, so that you have the ammunition of array of things to begin with. For example, as a sociology student myself, I could begin with a quote from Yoginder Singh, who says that India is a society where continuity and change coexist in a complex relationship. Now, when we come to the body of the question, the body of the question is asking about the dilemmas and the paradoxes faced by Indian society. Now, how do I generate sufficient number of points at the examination hall on my feet, even though I have not seen this question before? There are various frameworks for the same. You must have heard of the Pestle framework. I'll be using other frameworks also as I get going to other questions. But let's apply the Pestle framework. In the P, by P I mean political angle. By E I mean the economic angle. By S I mean the social angle. By T I mean the technological angle. By L I mean the legal angle. By E I mean the environmental angle. So you are looking at the question from the dimension of various subjects that you have already studied. Through the political angle, you can say that Indian society is facing the dilemma of democracy. We have institutionalized democracy through our constitution, yet democracy versus, let's say, social exclusion. Or you can use any other keyword. Give the example of violence against Dalits. Although we have Article 17, but you must be having the data of NCRB, where more than 50,000 cases of violence against Dalits are registered. This is a perfect example of where lack of fraternity is visible in society, but we have institutionalized fraternity in our society. You can use other example also. For example, you can say individual rights versus social community pressures. You can use examples like hate speech or mob lynching or khap panchayats. So you have examples here. This is the political angle. You can give one or two examples and you can move ahead. Let's go with the economic angle. In the economic angle, you know that Indian society has witnessed a fair amount of growth since the 1990s, since the LPGs. So you can say that economic growth versus exclusion. Inclusivity is an issue here. Although India is growing, but there's a divide existing between the various sections of society. Now you can use data by Oxfam to prove your point. You can also use data of uh, Oxfam data, for example. I don't remember the exact data. Of course, you must remember it. You can also give an idea of different sections. Like you can use such a community report which says that some communities have not witnessed the growth that the other communities have. In the third angle, social. In the social angle, I'm sorry, you can talk about rising female labor force participation. You must have the data of PLFS versus violence against women. What does this signify? You can give the data of rising individualism. You can't have data for it, but rising individualism versus community. For example, CAPS, caste associations. This is a dilemma that Indian society is facing. From the fourth angle, you can generate dimensions through technology. Digital penetration in India is increasing. You must have the data for for the number of users of internet in India. I think it is approximately 900 million plus. But there's a data by IAMI, and it's updated quite regularly. You must know that data. Versus digital divide. You can write data about rural versus urban or gender based urban divide. Then you can also have geographical angle. Now, how to bring geographical angle? You can talk about urbanization happening, yet a sufficient section of the Indian cities is not able to find housing. I think it's 17.6%, sorry, 17.6% of the urban population which lives in slums. You can provide data about segregation slash ghettoization of communities in Indian society. This is also a relevant dimension that you can generate in the answer. And then you can also provide data about constitutional dilemmas that India is facing. For example, delimitation. Today, for last 2 or 3 years, we have been discussing whether the southern states should get a fair deal in the delimitation or not. This is a dilemma. This is a paradox that Indian society is discussing. You can talk about secularism versus fundamentalism. This is also a debate or a dilemma or a paradox that the Indian society is facing these days. This is also a one way of providing, generating dimensions. You can also generate demographic dimension. India has demographic dividend, or at least it can have demographic dividend, but there is also employment crisis. Now, mind you, whenever you write any such point, you have to substantialize them. And for this, you need data. Now, let's say I was writing this demographic dividend. I have to show the population curve of India, something like that, and where we are standing, where we are bound to reach in 2041. if you provide such a curves, the answer will become more presentable. Now, since the question, now we have generated 7 dimensions. Now, since the question is asking to discuss, most students would leave it here. But since we are discussing, and since I, as a sociology student, am discussing it with you, I want you to provide 1 or 2 reasons why these dilemmas and paradoxes exist. You can provide, say, that adaptive nature of traditional structures. You can use M.N. Srinivas here, who has said the same thing for caste. He has said that jati wo cheez hai jo jati nahi hai. You can also provide an argument like of Yoginder Singh, who has said that in India, there's the modernity is characterized by modernization of Indian tradition. Now, why I'm doing this, although you might not have studied these things, because to set your answer apart, and merely providing listing down the dilemmas and paradoxes that the Indian society is facing these days will not give you sufficient marks, because the examiner does not want you to scratch the surface, does not want you to have that breadth enough, but also wants you to have show that depth also, that you are able to understand the root cause of the issue. How do we conclude? In these questions, you can conclude by using some different thinkers, or you can, if you can hit the essence of the question, you can say that it is the nature of the Indian modernity, where modernity and tradition coexist together, where change is coexist with continuity. So these paradoxes and dilemmas are not aberrations; these are engines of social change. This is how the Indian society is transforming. So this is how you can end with the questions. I hope there's no doubt as of now. I'm not aware. Let me log in through the YouTube video so that I can see if there's any doubt. Okay, I don't think there are any doubts coming. So let me move on to the second question. Let me take a look. What was it? The second question is, Indian society is known for its uniqueness and cultural diversity. Discuss. I think this is a fairly beginner type of question. You must, of all the things, even a beginner knows that India is one of the most diverse societies in the world. In fact, many people go on to say that India is a society of society. There are multiple societies coexisting in India. How do you begin to such a question? You can use a quote if you are prepared for it, or you can simply hit the essence of the question. You could, there are people who begin with current context, with data, but since this is quite conceptual of a question, I do not recommend that you begin with data or current context, simply because, let's say you use an example, like Indian constitution has 22 scheduled languages, 700 tribes. Using only one aspect of the diversity. Rather, and let's suppose if you begin with a current context, where something was showcased in, let's say, Bharat Mandapam, or in the, you remember the CSAT question that ruffled a few feathers about the Kalagram. So you can also begin there, that uh, in the what's that called? The Prayagraj Kumbh Mela, the diversity of India was showcased, highlighting its uniqueness. But I would say that you should begin with a quote, or you should hit the essence. There is a keyword for this, and that keyword is pluralism. So, for example, I had a quote for these types of questions, which is by a famous anthropologist, which is that the living unity of India lies beneath its apparent diversity. NK Bose. This is a good quote that you can begin with, provided you have prepared for it. But if you have not prepared for it, don't sweat it. You can say that Indian society is described as a plural society where immense diversity exists with civilizational continuity. This is a fair introduction, and frankly, you do not have enough time, enough space to write any further in the introduction, because this is a bit uh, a simple type of question. So, since I've discussed the introduction, let me go on to the demand of the question, or the body of the question. The question is talking about cultural diversity, or the diversity in Indian society. How do I generate points for it? You know that India has religious diversity. Since ancient times, India has had the many various religions in India: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. Of course, Sikhism arose in the medieval times, but Islam, Christianity, Jews. You can give these examples. Then you can provide linguistic diversity, that there are more than 700 languages and dialects. You must be prepared with the data, because your competitors will be providing the data. Then you can provide ethnic diversities. In ethnic diversity, you can go on with uh, tribes, or you can use caste to substantialize your points. Then you can talk about cultural diversities. Now, here, let me expand culture. In culture, you can talk about architecture, numerous styles of architecture in India. You can talk about food, the delicacies, the amount of detail that exists in Indian cuisines is unparalleled. You can talk about dress, you can talk about festivals, you can talk about performing arts. You can expand it in umpteen number of dimensions. Then you can talk about social diversity, like family types slash kinship. You know that in India there are various kinship patterns. The North Indian kinship pattern, the South Indian kinship pattern. If you are from sociology option, you will recall that Iravati Karve has divided India into 4 kinship zones. You can provide that. There are various types of marriage. In Hindu customs, I think, if I'm not wrong, there are 8 types of marriages. You can talk about that. So here you're showcasing the immense amount of diversity that is present in Indian society. Of course, if you want to add more points, then you can go on to write tribal diversity. Then you can talk about other dimensions also. But this is sufficient because you will be expanding upon these aspects of the diversities that exist in India. But this is only the first part of the question, because in every society there is diversity. India has it too. Sure that India is more diverse, but every other society also has diversities. Now, how do I answer this uniqueness aspect of Indian society? Why is Indian society unique? Because we have unity in diversity. You know that despite being so different from each other, despite being so diverse, we have stayed together as one civilization for thousands of years. And our experiment as a modern constitutional state is also successful. Here, actually, in this uniqueness aspect of the question, here your depth comes in. Because in the previous aspect of the question, you are just listing down the various dimensions. But UPSC wants more. UPSC wants to understand whether you know why this diversity makes India unique. There's diversity within diversity. Do you know that Islam in India is not, Islam in North India is not the same as Islam in Kerala? There are some parts, there are some aspects of Islam where they worship shrines, where they go to Sufi dargahs, where for others it is not permitted. So there's diversity. Even Hindus, there are multiple sects, sampradayas working in India. This is the uniqueness of Indian society. Then you can talk about I'm sorry, uh, civilizational continuity of Indian society. That there's a bit of problem. Let me just fix it. So you can talk about civilizational continuity in Indian society. You can talk about the assimilationist nature of Indian society. If you have read history, you'll realize that Hinduism also assimilated various tribes and incorporated them within its frameworks. You have to write these points. There is no framework for this. In the first part of the question, where I generated dimensions like religious diversity and ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, social diversity, here frameworks will help you. But here, your understanding of the topic and your uh, understanding of the core of the question will matter. And this is where you have to get an edge. We will help you understand these dimensions that are relevant to the question, but you have to revise the core concepts, the core essentials of Hindu society. You can also talk about here in this question about the syncretic nature, the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, the Bhakti Sufi traditions. You can talk about the adaptive nature of Indian society, where modernity and tradition exist together. You know, in Western societies, there's a rupture. There was a rupture due to Industrial Revolution, due to French Revolution, between what they exist in the medieval times and in the modern times. In contrast, in India, traditions have adapted. Caste was a different thing in the past. Today, caste has become associational in nature. It has clung to politics. You have to write these things. Then India is a society which is plural in nature. There is a there's a there's a tendency for capacity to absorb changes. Many different cultures have come to India, the Shaks, the Huns, and the other foreigners, and they have been absorbed in a matter of few centuries. This is the uniqueness of our society. And finally, When you go on to conclude the answer of this question, you can use Jawaharlal Nehru's quote, or you can maybe say that it is essentially the India's diversity that has led to the success in the experiment of democracy. Because we are so different that we have to have democracy. There's no other way for us. So this is also one way to conclude. Any doubts? Of course, there's religious syncretism, there's crucible, it is called the crucible of religions. Then you can write other things, but the thing is, you don't miss the demand of the question. You write not just how it is diverse, but how this diversity makes Indian society unique. And these dimensions have to be there. Another thing that I wanted to mention to you all was about the dimensions that you are writing in the answer. When I'm writing uniqueness of Indian society, you must be able to see that I'm using some keywords. I'm not using paragraphs because in the mains examination, you do not have sufficient time. So you have to be ready with core concepts that can be summarized in one or two words, and you have to use them. And this comes through practice, and this comes through conceptual clarity. There is no other way for this. Let's move on to the third question, which I am to discuss this day. Let me see. Critically examine the contribution of major women organizations in contemporary India. Now, how do we do this? Critically examine. This is the keyword. And then there is women organization. I think this is a topic that is mentioned clearly in the GS1 syllabus. And this is a topic that is also taught by almost everyone who takes GS1 in any coaching. So you already have a list of different uh, women's organization and the role that they have played in society. How do we introduce? Should we just define women's organization? I don't think so. Or should we write about a current context? For example, I remember having heard PM Modi hailing the immense contribution of Seva as an organization in women's role, women empowerment. Or you can talk about the SHGs. PM Modi hailed in a recent speech, PM Modi hailed the role of the SHGs in women-led development in India, highlighting the importance of women's organization. This is how you can begin through a current context. You can, of course, use a quote which highlights the importance of women's agency. You have to be prepared for it, of course. So this is how you can begin. Data, I don't think so that it will be as relevant to this question in this context, but you can of course use it if you want. Now, how do we break this question into different parts? Now, since this question has critically examined, so we have to highlight not just the positive role that these organizations have played, but also the challenges or the gaps that may exist. So how do I begin? Now, same pestle framework will come handy here because this is a very broad question. So you can use the political angle in your mind. You don't have to write that I'm using pestle framework. You can say political awareness or slash mobilization as an example. The second, you can talk about social empowerment. Third, you can talk about legal advocacy. Fourth, you can talk about economic empowerment of women. Then you can talk about technological change that women's organizations are bringing, right? So you can use these dimensions. The pestle framework is quite handy here. And how do you now you can talk about, for example, in the political mobilization aspects, you can talk about any women's organization that you remember, or you can talk about the role that uh, the women's as the member of the panchayats are playing in these areas. For example, in Kerala, from what I remember from during my preparation times, there are many panchayats where women are leading and they are collaborating with SHGs. You have to have those examples ready. So you can say that 14 lakh elected women representatives exist in the PRIs these days, and they are leading change. If you can remember any women who has been awarded by PM or Ministry of Panchayati Raj, that will come handy here. In the social empowerment aspect, you can talk about organizations like Dahej Virodhi Sangathan. You can talk about Me Too movement that is happening in the digital space. You can talk about uh, the role played by various SHGs, if you remember any SHGs like Kudumsri and all. Then, in the legal aspect of the answer, you can talk about the role played by National Federation of Indian Women, how they have played a role in the uh, post Nirbhaya case, in the amendments that have taken place in the criminal law. This is also a relevant example. In legal advocacy, you can talk about the role played by women's organizations in the amendment to POXO Act, if I'm not wrong, or the POSH Act, the role played by different organizations. Economic, of course, SHGs you already prepare in GS2, so you have to substantialize this. But this is not the end of the question. Women's organization, you have to analyze them critically. Now, of course, you cannot go on to say that women's organizations are not bringing about change or are regressive in nature. That's not the point. So here in critically examining, however, you can say challenges persist. And here you can talk about implementation gaps. You can talk about lack of voice. You can talk about lack of inclusivity within women's organization. Now let me elaborate. Implementation gaps means that although women's organizations have been talking about advocating change, but these are not implemented. You can take an example like uh, women's organizations have been talking about eliminating the marital rape exception that still exists today, whereas it does not exist in various progressive democracies, but it is not being implemented, right? So there is implementation there. Then there is lack of voice. Not all women have the same agency. Compare the state of uh, Northeast women versus women in Delhi. They do not have the same voice. Women's organizations are also deprived of funds. This is also a significant critique of the women's organization in their ability to bring about change in Indian society. You can talk about lack of inclusivity within. There's a there's a debate of intersectionality in women. Not all women are the same. There are Dalit women, there are Muslim women, there are disabled women, there are rural women versus urban women. Women's organizations do not necessarily represent the voice of all these sections of it. This is also a significant critique that you can provide. Then generic points always exist, like this issue of funding slash operational challenges that women's organization face, and then lack of unity, like due to caste factors, women cannot women cannot come together, or due to religious seclusion existing between in Indian society, women cannot come together. Now, since you have critically examined this question, and of course, then there is the issue of LGBTQs, which can of course bring in. Now, when you conclude, you can use any quote by PM Modi. You can use Nari Shakti. You can talk about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. You can use the Constitution. There are various articles in the Constitution which specifically talk about women, be it Article 15 Clause 3, or maybe 41, if I remember correctly, where you can bring in the perspective. You can use that providing agency or the successful participation of women in the for the social change is essential to realize the vision of article given in the constitution or the preamble. Or you can use the vision of sabka saath sabka vikas. You can say Nari Shakti. You can talk about uh, the idea of Viksit Bharat. Without women's equal participation in society, the idea of Viksit Bharat cannot be realized. So you can talk about that. Now, I also want to discuss that whether in government measures, you can talk about what government has done in order to promote this, or you can say way forward. Since you have given a critique, you can give a way forward. Now, I have a framework for the same way forward, which is the trifecta of state, society, and market. What can state do? What can society do? What can market do in order to give more voice to women? If you can, if you are able to generate at least 1 or 2 points, for example, you can say that what can the state do? Women-led NGOs can be deregulated. You can say that. This is a good point that you can say. Or you can provide some incentives to women-led NGOs. 33% reservation that is going to be implemented, Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, can be implemented soon enough so that it provides voice to women's organization in the parliament. What can the society do? You have to bridge the gender divide in education. You have to educational gap, digital divide. You have to bridge. So you can give these points. What can the market do? There is the idea of corporate social responsibility, which you can bring in here. CSR funds can be mobilized in order to support women's organization. You can provide hand holding of women's NGOs. This can also be a relevant point. So using this framework of state, society, and market, because in any country, there are only three things: state, society, and market. And if one solution or two solutions from each, you are able to generate at least 6 points. And this will set you apart from other candidates. So that's about the four questions that I was going to discuss. I don't know whether we are going to discuss. Okay, let's continue anyways. The last question that we have to discuss today is about do you agree that urbanization and slums are inseparable? Explain. I repeat. Do you agree? Let me write it down anyways. So do you know why this question is asked? Actually, I'll tell you a brief story because you want to hit the demand of the question. This question is asked because it was assumed that slums are temporary features of inner cities. Gradually, when development will occur, slums will wither away and we will have the skyline that we want in our Indian cities. But it has been observed, and it is being observed for last 50, 60 years, that slums are a recurrent feature of Indian cities. Go to any Indian city and you'll find a slum. So some scholars began to argue that slums are not aberrations, that rather slums are defining features of Indian city. You cannot be as critical as the scholars are, of course. But a better way to begin this question would be to provide data. And what better data than any recent data or let's say census data or NFHS data or any data that you have in mind. If I remember correctly, around 17.4% of urban residents in India live in slums. This is a good data. You can say, according to census 2011, 17.4% of Indian urban population lives in slums. This raises a question whether slums are temporary aberrations or they are defining feature of Indian urbanization. Now, mind you, you have not taken a stand in the introduction. And this is important because the examiner may not have the same viewpoint as you. So you are exploring that the above data is raising a question and let us explore it. Now here, if you have understood this topic good enough, you can talk about the various factors that are leading to it. There is rural distress, there is caste, which acts as a social security, there is inequality or paradox of poverty. Then you can provide other keywords also like informality, housing crisis. So you made a flowchart in which you have demonstrated how this problem is occurring. Why is this important? Because it gives the examiner some breathing space. He has been reading words in the previous scripts, in the next script, and this gives him a breather. And it also makes your copy more presentable before the exam. And since you know it, you should do it. Now, you can use the first dimension as slums appear to be inseparable. Here, you are still not taking a stand from urbanization. This is the first part of the body that you're breaking here. Now you are writing the same dimensions here, that there is migration driven, excessive migration. You can use a projection by UN that uh, by 2050 the urban population is going to rise by 45% or 50%. I don't know for sure. You can check the data yourself. Then you have to give the data of housing market. There is absence of housing, and by absence of housing I mean that uh, by absence of housing I mean accessible housing, which everyone can take. Of course, there are houses available, but if someone cannot afford it, then uh, it's of no use for lower income groups. I think there's a data which says that um, from the Ministry of Home Affairs, which says that there is a shortage of 19 million houses. So where will these people go? They will have some informal settlements. Then you can provide data like informality, which it is a survival strategy. 90% of the urban jobs are informal in nature. This is also a dimension. Then we have chain migration. When the rural population migrates, and especially the lower income groups, they migrate to cities because they know people who is staying there, and they host them at their place, and somehow this temporary arrangement becomes a permanent one. This is a feature of Indian society. You must know this. This is called as chain migration. Kinship networks, network-based migration. Then in planning itself generates informality. Indian cities have a concept of master planning, but this master planning does not take into account the peri-urban areas or the other areas, and there's lack of implementation also. This is also a dimension. Then you have to generate social dimension. There's social exclusion. There's ghettoization. Groups like Dalits, Adivasis, Muslims, they are ghettoized. They are secluded to specific corners of Indian cities. And this is visible when you visit Aslam, of what income group, what caste group people stay in the slums. And there is functional complementarity. As a student, you must be staying somewhere, and your house help who comes to your place, they provide for you or they work for you at very cheap, they provide quite cheap labor. So the Indian economy or the urban economy is running due to the complementarity that exists with the slums, with the informal settlements in the cities. Now, this is a conceptual thing. You cannot generate dimensions for all types of fish. So you have to understand these. Now, how do you provide examples? Of course, in some dimension like migration, you can provide data that 28% migration. In housing market, you have the data by Ministry of Home Affairs. In I'm sorry, in chain migration, you can use a thinker like Zan Bremen. In planning also, there's thinker called as Gautam Bhan. They'll tell you that. Then there is social exclusion. You can give the example of Dalits who are not provided housing. In urban cities also, people ask, what caste are you? So there's housing-based discrimination and functional complementarities. You can talk about um, Dharavis and informal economy, which supports leather industries or other industries. So you have to provide examples. But unlike the tone of the question, you have to generate another dimension, which is that slums need not be inevitable. This is important because you are not a sociologist. You are preparing for a job of an administrator, and you cannot have a pessimistic outlook towards India. If I were writing a sociological answer in my sociology paper, I would have ended here and there. But as a future administrator, I have to have hope. Otherwise, what's the point of me going to UPSC, clearing it, and sitting for a position where I'm willing to change whatever is wrong? So you have to give this dimension. And in this dimension, you can talk about inclusive urban planning. You can talk about having land banks. You can talk about realistic master plans, mixed use developments. These are keywords that you must prepare when you're preparing for urbanization. You can talk about affordable housing and in-situ development. You can give an example of how in Delhi, you keep hearing the news that PM Modi unveiled various slum redevelopment projects. You can use that example or example of Dharavi redevelopment projects. Then you can talk about regulatory reforms, which will eliminate or which will help reduce the housing crisis that is happening in the society. So why am I telling this? Because there are some topics in which frameworks help, but there are some topics in which conceptual clarity is a must. Why regulatory planning and regulatory reforms? Like we have very high FSIs. If you remember correctly, in the last economic survey, in the 2024 economic survey, there was a great deal of talk about the land banks, the FSI norms, the lack of faster approvals, uh, digitization of land records. You have to write those points. Transit-oriented development. If people are able to transit from one part of the city to another, then maybe they can take houses in other parts of the city, like people who are working in Delhi, if they can easily reach Greater Noida, then they can have houses, and there's excess supply of housing in Greater Noida. This is a good example. Community-led groups, for example, there is Odisha's Jaga mission, which is an example which you must be prepared with. Ahmedabad slum networking project. All these you have to write. You should not end your answer on a pessimistic tone, because this is not a sociological answer. Sociologists can be pessimistic, sociologists can be critical, but you are a future administrator. How do we conclude this answer? We conclude this answer by saying that a city's strength or a city's beauty is not measured by its skyline, but how it treats its most vulnerable. This is a good quote, which I picked up last year. You can use this. So you must be prepared with quotes. Or you can simply use again the same uh, idea of sabka saath, sabka vikas, and sabka prayas. This is also a good way to do that. The logic of slums or the providing affordable, inclusive housing to all urban residents in India is not just a developmental priority, but also that is essential to the idea of Viksit Bharat or slash Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Prayas. So here you're using keywords. You're ending on a positive note that we need to do this. I think that's about it. Sir, if you're in the session, you can maybe conclude the session. I'm done with the discussion of these 5 questions. Are there any doubts? Of course, Drone DB, SDG 5, yeah. Thanks for mentioning it. SDG can also be a good way to end an answer, but it is being overused. If you'll see 100 scripts, you'll find that almost everyone is ending with SDGs. So you need to find that originality in yourself. This is what I was doing in my last attempt when I was trying to improve from 440 already. I was trying to find those niche things related to every other topic, those quotes, those keywords, those things that were said by PM the visions, and the best practices, the examples. You have to be prepared with this. There's no alternative because the competition is such. I think that's about it. And if I think we can conclude the session with this. Uh, so hope you all enjoyed it. Answer writing is not just uh, about listing down points, about memorizing your notes, but it is also about, and it's an art in itself. Sometimes frameworks helps, sometimes structures help, but other times you have to have great conceptual clarity in order to understand the demand of the question. You have to have sufficient number of ammunition of data, facts, examples to provide the examiner a feel that you know more than him about the topic. And this is what toppers are doing. This is what I was doing. And this is what you should be doing. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, this is a question Kosik has asked. Sir, do we need to use elaborate sentences or just the crisp address of the dimension? I think crisp address because 7 minutes, 150 words or 250 words for 10 minutes. So, and if you want to generate as many points as possible, then you have to use very crisp. That's why I was saying that you have to use keywords, transit oriented development, informality as a survival strategy. 4 words. How do we get the data? Yeah, take any compilation from any coaching or do your own research if you have the time. If you're taking mains this year, of course, you don't have the time. So browse in the market, get those photocopies, compile them topic wise, and be prepared because almost every topper that I know of has had this, done this. I have done this, so you have to do this. Yeah, of course. So I'll be ending the session now. It's already 1 hour past and 20 minutes past 1 hour. I think I've addressed these 5 questions. Okay, let's end it.